The storm had been raging for 3 hours when Lee Tai-ho finally decided to check the tide pools one last time. Rain hammered against the windows of the Busan Marine Research Facility as he pulled on his waterproof jacket. The year was 2157, and Earth had only recently joined the Galactic Trade Consortium. Most aliens still looked down on humans as a primitive species barely worthy of notice. Tai-ho worked as a marine biologist at the coastal facility. He loved his job studying sea creatures and protecting marine life. At 28 years old, he had dedicated his life to understanding and helping ocean animals. His colleagues often joked that he cared more about fish than people, but Tai-ho knew that was not true. He simply believed all life deserved protection. Dr. Kim So-min was working. Late in the lab, when Tai-ho grabbed his emergency kit, she looked up from her microscope with concern in her dark eyes. Her black hair was tied back in a messy bun after a long day of research. "You should not go out in this weather," So-min said. "The storm is getting worse." Tai-ho zipped up his jacket and checked his flashlight. "The tide pools get dangerous during storms like this. If any animals are trapped out there, they could die." So-min shook her head but knew better than to argue. She had worked with Tai-ho for 3 years and understood his nature. He would risk his own safety to save any creature in need. "At least take the emergency beacon," she said. "If something happens, I can send help." Tai-ho clipped the beacon to his belt and headed into the storm. The wind nearly knocked him over as soon as he stepped outside. Rain stung his face like tiny needles. He could barely see 10 feet in front of him. The tide pools were located on rocky ledges below the facility. During normal weather, they were beautiful formations filled with colorful sea life. But storms turned them into death traps. Strong waves could smash small creatures against the rocks or trap them in pools that would dry up when the tide went out. Tai-ho carefully climbed down the wet rocks, using his flashlight to see. The beam cut through the darkness and rain. He checked each pool methodically, looking for any animals in distress. Most of the pools were empty. The smart creatures had found deeper water or hidden in cracks between the rocks. He was about to head back when something caught his eye. In the largest tide pool, something was moving weakly near the bottom. Tai-ho aimed his flashlight at the water and gasped. The creature looked like a cat, but it was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its fur seemed to be made of crystal that reflected his flashlight beam in rainbow colors. Even underwater, the fur glowed softly with its own light. The creature was about the size of a house cat, but its body was more graceful and its limbs were longer. The strange cat was clearly in trouble. It floated near the surface, barely moving. Dark liquid that might have been blood drifted from several wounds on its body. Sharp rocks had cut the creature as the waves tossed it around. Tai-ho did not hesitate. He dropped his flashlight and emergency kit and jumped into the tide pool. The cold water shocked his system, but he ignored the discomfort. His only thought was saving the dying creature. The cat was surprisingly light when he lifted it from the water. Its crystal fur felt soft and warm despite being soaked. The creature opened eyes that glowed like blue stars. It looked at Tai-ho with intelligence he had never seen in an animal before. "It's okay," Tai-ho whispered. "You're safe now." Getting out of the tide pool while carrying the injured creature was difficult. The rocks were slippery and waves kept trying to pull them back. But Tai-ho managed to climb to safety. He gathered his equipment and hurried back to the facility. Dr. So-min was shocked when Tai-ho burst through the door carrying the glowing creature. She had seen many strange things working in marine biology, but nothing like this. "What is that thing?" she asked. "I don't know, but it's badly hurt," Tai-ho said. "Help me get it to the medical bay." They laid the creature on an examination table under bright lights. Its crystal fur sparkled and shifted colors as it breathed. The wounds were deeper than Tai-ho had first thought. 3 gashes ran along its side and 1 paw was badly cut. "This is not from Earth," So-min said. "Look at its bone structure. And that fur is not biological. It's some kind of living crystal." I don't care where it came from, Taiho said. It needs help. He began cleaning the wounds with gentle care. The creature watched him work with those bright blue eyes. It did not try to bite or scratch, even when the treatment must have been painful. Instead, it seemed to understand that Taiho was trying to help. As Taiho worked, the creature began to purr. The sound was like tiny bells ringing in harmony. Its fur grew brighter, and the rainbow colors became more vivid. Both humans stared in wonder as the alien cat responded to kindness. We should report this to the authorities, Somin said. An alien creature on Earth could be dangerous. There might be others. Taiho continued bandaging the wounds. After it heals, he said. Right now it just needs care. The creature raised its head and touched Taiho's hand with its nose. The contact sent a warm, tingling sensation up his arm. For a moment he felt a connection to the alien mind. Gratitude and trust flowed between them. I think it understands, Taiho said softly. He wrapped the creature in warm blankets and set up a recovery area in his apartment above the lab. The storm was finally passing, and the first light of dawn showed through the windows. The creature curled up in its makeshift bed and closed its glowing eyes. Taiho watched over his patient as it slept. He had no idea that his simple act of compassion would soon change the fate of two civilizations. All he knew was that he had saved a life. For him, that was enough. The creature's fur pulsed gently with each breath like a living constellation. Whatever it was, and wherever it came from, Taiho had made a choice. He would protect it and help it heal. It was what any decent being would do. Outside, the storm clouds cleared and sunlight streamed across the ocean. A new day was beginning, and with it a new chapter in human history. 3 days had passed since Taiho rescued the crystal cat from the storm. The creature was healing faster than any earth animal would. Its wounds had closed completely, and its glowing fur was brighter than ever. Taiho had named it Nari after, the Korean word for lily, because of how its fur bloomed with light. Nari had made herself at home in Taiho's small apartment. She followed him everywhere with graceful steps that made no sound. When Taiho worked at his desk, Nari would curl up nearby and watch him with those intelligent blue eyes. Her purring filled the room with gentle music that helped Taiho concentrate. The apartment had become a wonderland of shifting colors. Nari's fur responded to her emotions and the light around her. When she was happy, it glowed warm gold and pink. When she was curious, it sparkled with silver and blue. At night, when she slept, the colors faded to soft purple and green like the northern lights. Dr. Soman visited every day to check on their unusual patient. She brought medical supplies and helped Taiho monitor Nari's recovery, but her worry was growing stronger each day. The energy readings are getting stronger, Soman said as she checked her scanner. Whatever she is, her body produces more power than a small nuclear reactor. Taiho was feeding Nari small pieces of fish. The alien cat ate earth food, but seemed to prefer it raw and fresh. Her diet was not much different from a regular cat, except she needed much more protein. She's not dangerous, Taiho said. Look how gentle she is. Nari rubbed against his hand and purred. Her fur glowed brighter with contentment. She had learned to understand some Korean words, and always responded when Taiho called her name, Somin. Looked out the window at the ocean. I keep expecting ships to appear on the horizon. If she came from space, someone must be looking for her. That afternoon, Soman's fears came true. Admiral Kang Hyun-woo arrived at the facility with a team of soldiers. He was a tall, serious man who commanded Earth's Xenological Defense Division. His job was to protect Earth from alien threats. Dr. Lee. You are harboring an unregistered alien life form, the Admiral said. This is a violation of Galactic Consortium protocols. Taiho stood protectively in front of his apartment door. She's injured and recovering. I won't let anyone harm her. Harm her. Admiral Kang laughed coldly. Son, you have no idea what you're dealing with. That creature belongs to the Drakmari Empire. Dr. Soman went pale. Every human who studied galactic politics knew about the Drakmari. They were one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the known universe. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic to younger species. The Drakmari are dragons, Admiral Kang continued. Not literally, but close enough. They're massive beings with incredible lifespans and tempers to match. They've destroyed entire star systems for lesser insults than stealing their property. I didn't steal anything, Taiho protested. I saved her life. Ambassador Park Ji-won arrived an hour later. She was Earth's most experienced diplomat and had dealt with dozens of alien species. Her usually calm face was tight with stress. The situation is worse than we thought, she announced. The creature you rescued is not just any Drakmari pet. Her name is Nari, and she's the bonded companion of Sovereign Veltar himself. Admiral Kang cursed under his breath. The supreme leader of the entire Drakmari Empire. This just became a matter of interstellar war. Ambassador Park nodded grimly. Among the Drakmari, the bond between a leader and their companion is sacred. Losing a bonded creature is considered an act of war. The penalty is usually the complete destruction of the offending species. Taiho felt the blood drain from his face. But I saved her. She was dying. That won't matter to them, the ambassador said. The Drakmari think in terms of honor and possession. They'll assume we captured her for experiments or as a hostage. Inside the apartment, Nari sensed the tension. Her fur shifted to worried orange and red patterns. She pressed against the door and made soft chirping sounds. She could feel Taiho's distress through their growing bond. How long do we have? Admiral Kang asked. Unknown, Ambassador Park replied. But Drakmari warships can cross the galaxy in days. When Sovereign Veltar discovers his companion is on Earth, he'll come personally to retrieve her. Dr. Soman looked terrified. What can Earth's defenses do against Drakmari technology? Nothing, the Admiral admitted. One of their ships could crack our planet like an egg. Our only hope is to return the creature immediately and hope they show mercy. Taiho opened his apartment door. Nari bounded out and leaped into his arms. Her fur glowed with relief and happiness. She nuzzled his face and purred her bell-like song. Look at her, Taiho said to the officials. Does she look like a prisoner? She chose to stay with me. Ambassador Park studied the alien cat with professional interest. Nari's fur was cycling through happy gold and pink colors. She was clearly healthy and content. That might actually help our case, the ambassador said slowly. If she's obviously well cared for and happy, it could reduce their anger. Or make it worse, Admiral Kang argued. They might think we brainwashed her somehow. News of the situation spread quickly through Earth's government and media. Panic began to build as people learned that humanity might face extinction because one man saved a drowning animal. Some called Taiho a hero. Others blamed him for dooming the human race. But Taiho ignored the criticism. He spent his time caring for Nari and trying to prepare her for whatever was coming. I won't abandon you, he whispered to her as they sat watching the sunset. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Nari purred and touched her nose to his hand. The warm, tingling sensation had grown stronger over the past few days. Sometimes Taiho could almost sense her thoughts and emotions. She was trying to communicate something important, but he couldn't understand what. On the 5th day after the rescue, long-range sensors detected something approaching Earth. A massive ship was traveling faster than anything humans had ever seen. It would arrive within hours. Admiral Kang activated all of Earth's defense systems, even though everyone knew they were useless. Ambassador Park prepared formal apologies in 17 different alien languages. The world held its breath and waited. Sovereign Veltar was coming to reclaim his companion. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. Everything depended on the reaction of an ancient alien dragon who had just lost the most precious thing in his long life. Taiho held Nari close as the alien ship approached. Her fur glowed with nervous purple patterns that matched his own anxiety. Soon they would face the most powerful being in the galaxy. Neither of them knew that this meeting would change both their civilizations forever. The Drakmari warship appeared in Earth's sky like a second moon. It was massive beyond human comprehension, stretching over 50 kilometers from end to end. The ship's surface was covered in scales that shifted from deep purple to silver as it moved. Ancient symbols glowed along its hull, pulsing with the same light that flowed through Nari's fur. Every defense system on Earth tracked the alien vessel, but no one dared to fire. The ship's energy readings were off all known scales. It could have destroyed every city on the planet with a single weapon discharge. Taiho stood on the facility's observation deck, holding Nari in his arms. The alien cat was trembling, and her fur flickered between fear patterns of dark blue and bright warning colors of red and orange. She could sense her master approaching and the emotional storm inside the ancient dragon. "He's angry," Nari chirped, in sounds that almost formed words. Over the past week, her communication skills had grown rapidly. So very angry. Captain O'Minho arrived with a squadron of Earth Defense Force soldiers. He was a brave man who had fought in 3 colonial wars, but even he looked nervous facing Drakmari power. "Sir, we should evacuate the area," he said to Admiral Kang. "If this goes badly, the blast radius could level half the city." Admiral Kang shook his head grimly. "Running won't help. If Sovereign Veltar wants to destroy us, he can hunt down every human in the galaxy. Our only chance is to face this with dignity. Doctor." Yunhana rushed in carrying a large translation device. She was Earth's leading expert on alien languages and had spent years studying Drakmari communication patterns. "I've programmed the translator with every Drakmari dialect we know," she said breathlessly. "But their language is incredibly complex. Each word has layers of meaning based on status, honor, and emotional context." A beam of light shot down from the alien ship and formed a glowing platform in the facility's courtyard. The air shimmered and crackled with energy that made everyone's hair stand on end. Sovereign Veltar materialized on the platform, and the humans gasped at their first sight of a true dragon. He stood 12 feet tall in a biomechanical suit that enhanced his already impressive form. The suit was made of the same scale-like material as his ship, and it moved like living skin. Beneath the armor, they could see glimpses of his true body. Massive limbs covered in natural scales, wings folded against his back, eyes that burned like blue stars. But it was his presence that truly overwhelmed them. Veltar radiated power and authority built over 8 centuries of ruling an interstellar empire. The air around him seemed to bend and warp under the weight of his anger. "Where is my companion?" he demanded in a voice like controlled thunder. The translation device struggled to capture the full meaning. Dr. Yoon could tell that his words carried undertones of grief, rage, and desperate love that no human language could express. Taiho stepped forward, still holding Nari. The little alien cat's fur blazed with recognition and joy. She chirped excitedly and reached toward her master with small paws. "She's here," Taiho said simply. "She's safe." Veltar's burning eyes fixed on the human. He had expected to find his beloved companion tortured or dead. Instead, she was clearly healthy and glowing with contentment. The dragon's anger faltered, replaced by confusion. Nari leaped from Taiho's arms and bounded across the courtyard. She ran up Veltar's armored form with the ease of long practice and settled on his shoulder. Her purring filled the air with crystalline music as she nuzzled his neck. The change in Sovereign Veltar was immediate and shocking. The terrible pressure of his anger lifted. His rigid posture softened. For a moment, he was not an ancient dragon, lord, but simply a being reunited with his beloved friend. "My little star," he whispered in his own language. "I thought I had lost you forever." Nari chirped and sang to him in rapid musical phrases. She was telling him what had happened, how the storm had caught her exploring Earth's oceans, how she had nearly drowned before a kind human saved her, how Taiho had healed her wounds and cared for her with no thought of reward. Veltar listened to every note his companion sang. His expression grew more puzzled with each detail. Finally, his burning gaze returned to Taiho. "You saved her life," he said through the translator. "Yes," Taiho replied. "Why?" The simple question caught everyone off guard. Ambassador Park had prepared complex speeches about human law and diplomatic protocol. But Veltar wasn't asking about politics. He genuinely wanted to understand. "She was drowning," Taiho said. "I couldn't let her die." "But you did not know who she was. You gained nothing from helping her. Your own species now faces destruction because of your actions." Taiho looked up at the massive dragon. "That doesn't matter. She needed help and I could give it. That's enough." Dr. Yoon's translator was working overtime trying to capture the emotional complexity of the conversation. The Drakmari language had dozens of different words for different types of love, sacrifice, and honor. But it had no equivalent for the simple human concept of helping someone just because it was the right thing to do. Veltar studied Taiho with new interest. In 8 centuries of life, he had never encountered such behavior. The dragon had conquered 1,000 worlds and met countless species. All of them acted from self-interest, fear, or the hope of gain. "Show me," Veltar commanded suddenly. "Show you what?" Taiho asked. "Show me where you found her. Show me how you saved her. I must understand this thing you have done." The group moved to the tide pools where Taiho had made his rescue. Nari rode on her master's shoulder, but her glowing eyes never left Taiho. She had formed a bond with her rescuer that even she didn't fully understand. Taiho pointed to the large pool where he had found Nari. She was floating there, barely breathing. The rocks had cut her, and the waves kept pulling her under. Veltar examined the sharp rocks and churning water. "These conditions would kill most beings. You risked your life entering this place." "I had to try," Taiho said. "But why?" Veltar pressed. "Why would you endanger yourself for a creature you had never seen before?" Taiho struggled to put his feelings into words. How could he explain something that felt so natural and obvious? "All life has value," he said finally. "It doesn't matter what species or where someone comes from. If they're suffering and you can help, then you help. That's what makes us human." Veltar was silent for a long time. He had ruled an empire built on strength and logic. Compassion was seen as weakness. Mercy was a luxury for those with power to spare. But this small, soft creature had risked everything to save a stranger. Nari chirped softly to her master. She was trying to share the emotions she had felt when Taiho pulled her from the water. The warmth of his touch, the gentleness of his care, the pure love that had asked nothing in return. For the first time in centuries, Sovereign Veltar felt something crack inside his ancient heart. This human had shown his companion a kindness that no Drakmari would have given, and he had done it simply because it was right. The dragon looked at Taiho with new eyes and began to wonder if perhaps his mighty civilization had forgotten something important along the way. Sovereign Veltar made a decision that shocked everyone. Instead of taking Nari and leaving immediately, he announced that he would stay on Earth to study human behavior. The dragon wanted to understand what drove Taiho's actions before making any final judgments. "I will observe this human in his natural environment," Veltar declared. "If his compassion is genuine, then perhaps my companion chose her rescuer well. If it is deception, then your species will face the consequences." Admiral Kang was terrified, but had no choice but to agree. The massive Drakmari warship remained in Earth's sky as a constant reminder of the stakes. One wrong move could doom humanity. Veltar used advanced holographic technology to disguise his true form. To human eyes, he appeared as a tall Korean man with striking features and an expensive suit. Only his unusually bright blue eyes hinted at his alien nature. The dragon followed Tai-ho, everywhere like a curious shadow. He watched the marine biologist work at the research facility. He observed how Tai-ho treated his colleagues with respect and kindness. He saw the human staying late to care for injured sea animals that had no economic value. "Why do you heal creatures? That cannot repay you," Veltar asked during one of their conversations. Tai-ho was bandaging a wounded seal pup that had been caught in fishing nets. The little animal was frightened but seemed to sense his gentle intentions. "They're in pain," Tai-ho replied. "That's reason enough." Veltar struggled to understand this logic. In Drakmari society, everything had a purpose and a price. Resources were allocated based on strategic value. The concept of giving without expecting return was foreign to him. The dragon's education continued when Tai-ho took him to visit his family. Lee Sunwoo was Tai-ho's younger brother and worked as an elementary school teacher. He lived in a modest apartment with their elderly grandmother, Lee Borum. Grandmother Lee was 85 years old, with silver hair and eyes that sparkled with wisdom. She welcomed the stranger into her home without question and immediately began preparing extra food. "Any friend of Tai-ho's is family here," she said warmly. "Sit and eat with us." Veltar found himself seated at a small table sharing a simple meal of rice soup and vegetables. The food was nothing like the exotic delicacies served in his palace, but somehow it tasted better than anything he had eaten in decades. Grandmother Lee asked about his work and his family. She listened to his careful answers with genuine interest. When she learned he had no living relatives nearby, she patted his hand with motherly concern. "That must be lonely," she said. "You should visit us more often. Everyone needs family." The dragon was stunned. This elderly human was offering him kindness and acceptance, even though they had just met. She asked for nothing in return except his company. After dinner, Tai-ho's brother showed Veltar around the local neighborhood. They passed a playground where Sunwoo stopped to help a crying child who had fallen from the swings. He cleaned the boy's scraped knee and stayed until his parents arrived. "You know that child," Veltar observed. "Not really," Sunwoo replied. "But he needed help and I was there." The dragon began to see a pattern. These humans helped each other as naturally as breathing. It wasn't unusual or heroic behavior. It was simply how they lived. The next day, Veltar accompanied Tai-ho to the elementary school where Sunwoo taught. The children were studying ocean life, and Tai-ho often visited to share his knowledge. He brought pictures of sea creatures and told stories about marine conservation. One little girl named Minju raised her hand with a serious expression. "Teacher Tai-ho, why do you work so hard to save fish? They're just animals." Tai-ho knelt down to her level and smiled gently. "All living things are connected, Minju. When we protect the ocean, we protect our future too. But even if that wasn't true, every creature deserves a chance to live and be happy." The children nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense. Veltar realized that humans taught compassion to their young as a fundamental value. It wasn't weakness or stupidity. It was the foundation of their entire civilization. That evening, Grandmother Lee told Veltar about the Korean concept of jong while they sat drinking tea. Her weathered hands wrapped around her cup as she spoke. "Jong is hard to translate," she explained. "It's deeper than love or friendship. It's the feeling that connects all living beings. When you truly understand jong, you care for others as much as yourself." "Even strangers?" Veltar asked. "Especially strangers," she replied with a smile. "Family and friends are easy to love, but when you show kindness to someone you don't know, that's when jong becomes real." The dragon pondered her words long into the night. His own species had once known something similar, but they had discarded such emotions as primitive and inefficient. The Drakmari had grown strong and logical, but they had lost something precious in the process. Over the following days, Veltar witnessed countless small acts of compassion. Dr. Kim Soman stayed late to care for sick animals even when she wasn't, being paid overtime. Captain Oh Minho risked his career to protect civilian protesters who were demonstrating against government corruption. Ordinary humans helped strangers carry heavy packages, shared food with the homeless, and comforted crying children. None of these actions made strategic sense. They cost time, energy, and resources that could have been used for personal gain. Yet humans performed them automatically without expecting recognition or reward. Most shocking of all was Taiho's continued care for Nari, even knowing it might doom his entire species. The human could have handed her over immediately, but instead, he made sure she was completely healed and happy. He spent his savings buying special food for her and built comfortable sleeping areas throughout his apartment. "Are you not afraid of me?" Veltar asked during one of their walks along the beach. Taiho considered the question seriously. "Should I be? I could kill you with a thought. My ship could destroy your world before you could blink. Your life depends entirely on my mercy." "I know," Taiho said calmly, "but being afraid wouldn't change anything. Fear would only make this harder for both of us. So you choose trust instead." "I choose to see you as you are," Taiho replied. "A being who loves his companion enough to cross the galaxy to find her. Someone capable of great love can't be entirely evil." Veltar stopped walking and stared at the human. After 8 centuries of life, this simple marine biologist was teaching him things he had never considered. The dragon began to wonder if his mighty civilization had grown powerful by becoming less than they once were. That night, Veltar contacted his ship and ordered a delay in their departure. There was still more to learn about these remarkable humans, and perhaps more to remember about what the Drakmari had lost along their path to galactic dominance. 2 weeks had passed since Veltar's arrival on Earth. The dragon had spent every day observing human behavior, and every night struggling to understand what he had seen. Finally, he could no longer contain his confusion, and made a decision that broke 8 centuries of Drakmari protocol. On a quiet evening, as Taiho was feeding fish in the facility's tanks, Veltar allowed his holographic disguise to fade away. His true form emerged in all its terrible majesty. 12 feet of scaled muscle and ancient power filled the small laboratory. Taiho turned and saw the Dragon Lord in his natural state for the first time. Most humans would have fled in terror, but Taiho simply nodded as if he had been expecting this moment. "Thank you for trusting me with the truth," Taiho said quietly. Veltar was surprised by the calm acceptance. "You are not afraid." "I was wondering when you would stop hiding," Taiho replied. "Nari kept looking at your disguise like it was silly. I figured you had a good reason for it." The Dragon Lord settled his massive form on the laboratory floor. His wings folded against his back, and his burning eyes studied the human with new respect. "I need to tell you something about my people," Veltar said. "Something we have hidden from the galaxy for millennia." He began to speak of ancient history that no other species had ever heard. Long ago, the Drakmari had been much like humans. They felt deep emotions and cared for each other with fierce loyalty. They created beautiful art and celebrated the joy of simple existence. But war had changed them. Centuries of conflict with other species had taught them that survival required strength above all else. Emotions became weaknesses to be eliminated. Compassion was a luxury they could not afford. "We engineered the feelings out of our children," Veltar explained with deep sadness. Each generation became more logical and less capable of love. We told ourselves we were evolving beyond primitive emotions. But you still feel, Taiho observed. I can see it in how you care for Nari. Veltar's great head lowered in shame. I am ancient even by Drakmari standards. I remember what we were before we changed ourselves. But I am nearly the last of my kind who can still love. The dragon told Taiho about the growing crisis in Drakmari society. Their young were born with brilliant minds and incredible abilities, but they felt no joy in their achievements. Depression spread through their civilization like a plague. Many Drakmari simply stopped caring about life itself. We call it the soul sickness, Veltar said. Our people are dying not from disease or war, but from emptiness. We have become so efficient at surviving that we forgot how to live. Taiho listened with growing understanding. That's why Nari means so much to you. She's one of the few things that still makes you feel alive. She is my connection to what we once were, Veltar confirmed. Her love is pure and simple. When I am with her, I remember what it felt like to be truly happy. The Dragon Lord revealed the real reason he had stayed on Earth. Watching humans had awakened memories he thought were lost forever. Their casual kindness reminded him of young Drakmari from centuries past. Their ability to find joy in simple things was something his people desperately needed to relearn. If positions were reversed, no Drakmari would have saved Nari, Veltar admitted. We would have calculated the risks and decided it was not worth the effort. Your species still possesses something we threw away in our pursuit of power. It's not too late, Taiho said gently. People can change. Whole civilizations can change if they really want to. Veltar looked at the human with desperate hope. Do you truly believe that? I have to, Taiho replied. The alternative is giving up, and that's not who humans are. The Dragon Lord made a decision that would reshape galactic history. Instead of simply taking Nari and leaving, he would propose something unprecedented. A cultural exchange between the Drakmari Empire and humanity. My people need to remember how to feel, Veltar said, and your people could benefit from our knowledge and protection. Perhaps together we can heal what both our species have lost. But first, there was the problem of Nari herself. Drakmari law required that bonded companions remain with their masters at all times. Yet Nari had formed a deep connection with Taiho that went beyond normal animal affection. The little crystal cat had grown during her time on Earth. Her intelligence had expanded, and her ability to communicate had improved dramatically. She now understood both Korean and Drakmari languages. More importantly, she had learned to love in ways that even amazed her ancient master. She doesn't want to choose between us, Veltar observed as he watched Nari move back and forth between him and Taiho. Her heart belongs to both of us now. This created an impossible situation under Drakmari law. A bonded companion who loved another being as much as their master was something that had never happened before. Traditional response would be to eliminate the competition, but Veltar could not bring himself to harm the human who had saved Nari's life. There might be another way, Taiho suggested carefully. What if she didn't have to choose? What if she could be bonded to both of us? The idea was so radical, it bordered on blasphemy in Drakmari culture. But as Veltar watched Nari glow with happiness at the suggestion, he realized it might be the perfect solution. A triple bond, the dragon mused. It would make you part of the Drakmari royal family by adoption. You would share in her immortality, and I would share in her love for you. The implications were staggering. If a human could become bonded to a Drakmari companion, it would prove that the barriers between species were not as solid as everyone believed. It would also give Veltar a legitimate reason to establish permanent ties between their civilizations. Nari chirped excitedly and began to glow brighter than ever before. Her fur cycled through every color in the spectrum as she sensed the possibility of keeping both her beloved beings in her life. The bonding ceremony is ancient and sacred, Veltar warned. Once it is done, we will all be connected for life. Your emotions will affect mine, and mine will affect yours. Are you prepared for that? Taiho looked at the massive dragon lord and the glowing crystal cat who had changed his life forever. 6 months ago, he had been a simple marine biologist with a quiet, predictable existence. Now he was being offered a chance to bridge two civilizations and help heal an ancient wound in the galaxy. Yes, he said, without hesitation. If it means Nari can be happy and your people can learn to feel again, then I'm ready. Veltar smiled for the first time in centuries. Perhaps there was hope for both their species after all. The bonding ceremony took place at sunrise on the beach, where Taiho had first brought Nari to safety. Veltar had called down ritual items from his ship, including crystalline circles that hummed with ancient power. The ceremony itself was older than human civilization and had never been attempted between different species. Ambassador Park and Admiral Kang watched nervously from a distance as the three participants stood in the center of the glowing crystals. Prime Minister Kim Dae-won had flown in personally to witness this historic moment that could determine humanity's future. Nari sat between Taiho and Veltar as the Dragon Lord began to chant in the old Drakmari language. The words were musical and complex, flowing like poetry across the morning air. As he spoke, the crystals began to resonate, and Nari's fur started to pulse in rhythm with the sound. Light flowed from the crystals into Nari and then outward to touch both Taiho and Veltar. The human gasped as alien emotions flooded through him. He could feel Veltar's ancient loneliness and desperate love for his companion. But he could also sense something deeper, a profound sadness for what the Drakmari had lost and hope for, what they might regain. Veltar experienced human emotions for the first time in centuries. Taiho's simple joy in helping others overwhelmed the dragon with its purity. The human's capacity for love without conditions or expectations was like sunlight after endless darkness. When the ceremony ended, all three beings were forever changed. Nari glowed brighter than ever before, her fur now containing patterns that reflected both human and Drakmari emotional signatures. Taiho found that his senses had expanded dramatically. He could see energy patterns in living things and communicate telepathically with his bonded companions. Most remarkably, Veltar felt his long-frozen heart begin to beat with renewed emotion. The bonding had awakened feelings he thought were lost forever. For the first time in 8 centuries, he cried tears of joy. News of the successful bonding spread across the galaxy within hours. The Drakmari Empire's most powerful leader had voluntarily shared his sacred companion with a member of a primitive species. Every alien civilization struggled to understand what this might mean. Veltar addressed the Galactic Consortium via holographic transmission with Taiho and Nari at his side. His announcement shocked the known universe. The Drakmari Empire formally recognizes humanity as our protected allies and cultural partners, the Dragon Lord declared. Any species that threatens Earth will face the full might of our forces. The political implications were staggering. Humanity went from being a barely tolerated newcomer to being under the protection of the galaxy's most powerful military force overnight. Species that had ignored or looked down on humans suddenly began requesting trade agreements and diplomatic meetings. But Veltar's most important announcement came next. He revealed the cultural exchange program that would bring young Drakmari to Earth to learn about human emotions and relationships. In return, human scholars and teachers would travel to the Drakmari homeworld to share their knowledge. My people have forgotten how to feel, Veltar explained to the galaxy. Humans possess something we desperately need to remember. This alliance will benefit both our civilizations. The first group of young Drakmari arrived on Earth 3 months later. They were smaller than Veltar, and their scales showed the muted colors of their engineered emotionlessness. But they were eager to learn despite their initial confusion about human behavior. Taiho found himself appointed as the first human ambassador to the Drakmari Empire. His simple apartment was replaced with a diplomatic residence, but he insisted on keeping the marine research facility as his primary workplace. He continued to rescue and care for injured sea creatures while also serving as a bridge between two very different civilizations. The young Drakmari students were fascinated by his work. They could not understand why he would spend time helping creatures that could never repay him. But as they watched him day after day, their carefully controlled emotions began to crack. A Drakmari student named Vex was the first to cry while watching Taiho comfort a dying whale. The massive sea creature had beached itself and could not be saved, but Taiho stayed with it for hours, making sure it did not die alone. "Why does this cause water to leak from my eyes?" Vex asked in confusion. "Because you're feeling sad," Taiho explained gently. "It means your heart is remembering how to care." Similar breakthroughs happened across the exchange program. Young Drakmari began to experience emotions they had only read about in ancient texts. They laughed at human jokes. They formed friendships based on affection rather than utility. Some even fell in love with their human teachers. Meanwhile, human scholars on the Drakmari homeworld were sharing their own gifts. Dr. Kim Salman established the first interspecies veterinary clinic treating both Earth animals and Drakmari companion creatures. Captain Oh Minho trained Drakmari security forces in protection techniques based on caring for civilians rather than just eliminating threats. Most importantly, Grandmother Lee became a beloved figure among elder Drakmari who visited Earth. Her simple wisdom and unconditional acceptance helped ancient dragons remember what they had lost. She taught them to find joy in small moments and to value relationships over achievements. The changes were not without challenges. Some conservative Drakmari opposed the cultural exchange as contamination of their superior civilization. A few radical groups even attempted to sabotage the program. But Veltar's authority and the obvious benefits to Drakmari mental health silenced most opposition. Within 2 years, the soul sickness that had plagued Drakmari society began to recede. Young dragons who learned human emotional expression were happier and more creative than any generation in millennia. They created new forms of art, combining Drakmari logic with human passion. They developed technologies focused on healing and growth rather than just power and control. The alliance also transformed Earth's position in galactic politics. Other species began to respect humanity, not for military strength or advanced technology, but for their unique wisdom about emotional intelligence and cooperation. Nari became a symbol of the new partnership. She spent half her time on Earth with Taiho and half on the Drakmari homeworld with Veltar. Her presence in both locations helped maintain the emotional connection between the two species. More remarkably, Nari eventually had offspring that carried the genetics of both worlds. These hybrid companion creatures bonded naturally with both humans and Drakmari, creating permanent bridges between the civilizations. 5 years after the rescue that started it all, Taiho stood in the same tide pools where he had found Nari. But now the facility had expanded into the galaxy's first interspecies rescue and research center. Humans and Drakmari worked side by side, saving creatures from dozens of different worlds. Veltar joined him on the rocky ledges, watching the sunset paint the ocean in brilliant colors. The ancient dragon had changed dramatically over the years. His scales now showed warm golds and greens instead of cold metallics. His eyes sparkled with rediscovered joy. "Do you ever regret that day?" Veltar asked. "Your simple life became infinitely more complicated because of one drowning creature." Taiho smiled as Nari appeared at his feet, her fur glowing with contentment. Around them, young humans and Drakmari worked together tending to injured sea life with equal care and dedication. "Never," he replied. "This is what the universe should look like, different species helping each other just because it's right." The Dragon Lord nodded in agreement. The galaxy had become a better place because one human had chosen compassion over fear. It was a lesson that would echo across the stars for generations to come. In the distance, more ships were arriving carrying beings from species that wanted to join the Alliance. The simple act of saving a drowning creature had grown into a movement that was reshaping galactic civilization. Humanity had finally found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or traitors, but as teachers of the most important lesson in the universe. That love given freely without expectation of reward was the greatest power of all.